What's up, YouTube? Ryan Panny here. Hope you guys are doing reasonably well. You know, I have been resisting, but now I'm triggered. So time to jump into this Eminem discussion a little bit. And what I'm anxious to discuss here doesn't just deal with Eminem's new album Kamikaze and the ensuing beefs that have come off the back end of it, but just in case, I'll give a quick little recap for the viewers. So Eminem drops an album called Revival at the end of last year. Everybody fucking hates it. And when I say fucking hates it, I mean it is critically panned in a way that we haven't seen in a minute for any major artist in music. Fast forward to just a couple weeks ago, and Eminem surprise releases a new album called Kamikaze, in which he pretty much spends the entire album lashing out at either people who didn't like Revival or lashing out at every younger, trendier hip-hop artist that he doesn't like Lil Yachty or Lil Pump or whoever, and basically bemoaning the lack of lyrical talent at the center of the hip-hop mainstream right now. And since on the record he's calling out so many people by name, the last couple weeks have been a real media shitstorm, which I'm not going to get into it here because you can literally follow it minor detail by minor detail anywhere else on the internet but this video. So I'm not going to waste my time on that. But in this sea of reactions to M's new album, there was this one article in particular that really caught my eye in a negative way. It was published earlier this week on NPR's website, and the title was "Eminem became a parody of himself and everybody's laughing," which I didn't know I was laughing. Now I'm really curious to find out why I'm supposed to be laughing. What is it that could be so funny? First off, in regards to this article, it is important to note that the entire angle of the article is that Kamikaze is a shitty album. I don't personally believe that. I thought it was a good album. Not a great album, because any album that has that song Normal or all the last 3 tracks on it, that's plenty enough to hinder it from being a great album, but I liked it. So the author and I do have a fundamental disagreement right there, just so you know. Now, this particular writer's complete disdain for Eminem is readily apparent throughout, but he does make some really good points in discussing M's album and kind of where he's at with his career. The first point mainly that Eminem is just taking himself too seriously and has kind of lost that charming sense of humor that made him appealing in the beginning. I agree with that. Another one is that he's being a giant hypocrite for being so damn sensitive to criticism. I absolutely agree with that. And the author, let's read the author's words here. Eminem has become one of those vapid pop stars he spent his formative years clowning. I mean, yeah, the guy came out and made fun of everybody, and now people are making fun of him, and all of a sudden it's an issue. So I agree with that. And the last point the author makes that I really like is just that Eminem's overall anger, it lies more with the changing climate of hip hop. And he's just taking it out on people. He's just kind of anxious and upset that hip hop is changing, because change is what happens when time also happens. So I think the author has a lot to say that's very interesting in this article. But the big assertion that this article makes that really fucked with me, and I think is worth discussing, is this idea that in 2018, being a technically skilled lyricist in hip hop, which Eminem basically personifies, is becoming outdated. Oof. That is a hell of a claim. That is a fucking hell of a claim. And in the words of the article, M spends so much time on Kamikaze slamming mumble rappers for their unintelligible and repetitive flows that he fails to realize his rap calisthenics sound no less ridiculous. Okay, but then there's a big leap here. The article says that Eminem points fingers at the Lils of rap who've made his penchant for intricate lyricism increasingly obsolete, if not totally passé. Wow. So what this author is claiming then, that this rise in popularity of lyrically simplistic SoundCloud rap and artists like Lil Yachty, Lil Xan, Lil Pump, whoever, the popularity of that whole movement is a sign that being an intricate lyricist and being technically skilled, that whole art of putting together complex bars, is now becoming outdated. Oof. It's certainly a weird thing to think about, because when you look at hip-hop history, the importance of being a good rapper is something that has constantly changed. Like, I would argue that in the late 90s and very early 2000s, when Eminem first came out, being a good lyricist was rewarded. I mean, look at Big Pun's legacy, and look at the legacy of guys like DMX and Ludacris, who were major hit makers, but were still underrated maybe, but still proficient lyrical MCs. Then as the 2000s decade progresses, you start to see lyricism not really matter as much anymore outside of a select few. You got people like Nelly with his full-blown pop rap sound. Then there was Lil Jon with the whole crunk movement. There's people like Chingy. None of these guys were lyricists, yet they were still wildly popular. And then just a couple years later, down the pike, you see probably the most glaring example of popular rap music straying miles away from anything that can be considered lyrical, and that's what I like to refer to as the ringtone era of rap. You know, Mims is This Is Why I'm Hot, and there's Laffy Taffy, and I try to forget some of them. Walk It Out by Ong. All these songs were like so far from lyricism that it's funny to look back on. It hasn't exactly aged well, but it was all wildly popular at the time. Now, for my money, the big exciting shift back towards lyricism occurred with that early 2010s generation of rappers who were mostly 80s babies who had grown up loving Nas and Eminem and Jay-Z, and that's people like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole, Drake when he wanted to be, as well as more eccentric figures like Chance the Rapper or even Yellow Wolf, more street dudes like Meek Mill, then later came the revivalists like Joey Badass, etc., etc., etc. All these new unique voices were making lyrics start to matter again, and it was a really exciting time to be a hip-hop fan, especially if you're mostly a 90s leaning fan. So what this article is asserting then is that the optimism and excitement surrounding that early 2010s generation has kind of faded at this point and been replaced by this newer, more youthful SoundCloud rap era. Essentially that another generational shift has occurred and people don't care about lyrics anymore, which is crazy to think about, but when you look at how I just outlined the last 20 years or so of hip hop, it's not entirely unlikely either. It could be that 2018, 2019, whatever the year is, could mark another pendulum swing for lyricism. And the reason this makes me nervous as a huge fan of the art of rapping myself is that this new generation of hip hop is getting a little bit too punk rock, a little bit too rebellious, a little bit too fuck the establishment. Like the Lil Yachty's of the world are coming out and saying that Tupac sucked and no one cares about lyrics, and that's cool if that's your musical approach, but this shouldn't be about dismantling the old guard. It should be about adding to the culture. I know this is kind of a weird example, but people forget that in the late 70s, the first Sex Pistols album and the first Van Halen album, they came out 3.5 months apart, and both did great. Punk rock and glamorous arena rock both coexisted harmoniously. There might not have been a lot of commingling between scenes, but both did well commercially, and both are remembered fondly. It should not be about replacing. This should be about adding and about coexisting. The attitudes of the Lils, as this article so fondly refers to them as, they remind me more of like the grunge movement in the early 90s. Just this total rejection and too cool for school attitude towards technical proficiency and accomplished musicianship. And looking back on the early to mid 90s, it was really sad to see a lot of great metal bands who were making great records get completely left behind and really struggle commercially. And I would hate to see the same thing happen in this era to great lyricists. In regards to that possibility, I hope the author is wrong about that. I think he is, because I just feel like hip hop is in such a great place right now, where I feel like everybody is eating. Like purists like Royce da 5'9" are selling records, the SoundCloud rap guys are selling records, the 80s babies who are more content-centered are selling records, the Kendricks, Coles, and Sean's. Old rappers like Jay-Z and Eminem and Nas are selling records. The experimental groups like Death Grips are selling records. Guys like Yellow Wolf and Danny Brown and Tyler Creator are all taking the genre in exciting different directions, and people are receptive and open to it. So we're in a good place. I don't think that it's all about this SoundCloud rap sound. It might feel like that because there's a certain demographic that dominates the noise on social media, but in reality, I think everybody is eating right now. Actually, I'm not sure there's been an era where so many different lanes are open for artists. It seems like there's an audience for everything. Now, what I hope for as a fan is to see every branch of this hip-hop tree kind of grow out simultaneously. That's what would be more fulfilling for me. Things don't have to get more lyrical, they don't have to get less lyrical. The anti-lyrics guys can continue to be more ignorant and more rambunctious, and then the lyricists can continue to win over fans who respect the craft. And new exciting subgenres can continue to form while the current ones retain their audience. I think that's very possible. That's my vision for the next 10 years of hip-hop. That's what I hope for. And while I do enjoy the music of a Trippie Redd or a 6ix9ine or a Lil Skies, to see their style absorb too much of the hip-hop market share As a fan, as a diehard fan of rapping as an art form, that would make me truly sad. Just like I don't think that lyricism should be the be-all, end-all either, which unfortunately, it just seems like Eminem is really stuck in that mindset. So it's definitely gonna be more important than ever going forward to really support the artists that we care about. But by the same token, it's also gonna be important that we broaden our palettes and respect talent in any form that it arrives. Lyrics, no lyrics, content, no content, face tattoo, no face tattoo. It shouldn't matter. I believe that in this internet age, all of these talented people should be able to flourish simultaneously. And you know, while it might be sad to watch Eminem kind of age and maybe become a little bit passé, hopefully not lyricism as a whole, but Eminem himself, while that's sad to watch, I think any world where Kendrick Lamar wins a Pulitzer Prize, that means that lyricism is alive and well. So this was a really interesting read, and it seems like Eminem's album has inspired a lot of interesting discussion, but I choose to remain optimistic regarding just the value and relevancy of lyrical skill in hip hop. As always, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video and are not yet subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so by clicking right over here, as well as checking out any of the other hip hop related content that I publish on this blog on a weekly basis. Really appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to hit that like button. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Quora, Genius, wherever the fuck there's a picture with my face next to it. Click that. Your support means the world to me. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys soon.